Hello, darling hearts. It's Gabs coach Emma here with another interview. And today I'm joined by James, known as the Carnivorist, on Instagram. And that's how we met because I saw your interview with Low Ox Grandma, and I just did another interview with her recently.
Yes.
So interesting, the Low Ox stuff. I was just talking with my daughter about how she never listens to my YouTube channel, so she won't mind me saying that when she was little, right up until the age of about 8, we still had bedwetting. And now I know what it was. It was me feeding her high oxalate foods. And so Laura's grandma and me were talking about granny nappies and not having to wear incontinence pads, not having that fear of being incontinent when as you're growing older. I mean, I don't know how old you are. I've just seen your before and after picture on your Instagram account, James. What a difference. It's just like
I just
chalk
turned
and
50.
cheese. Looking
Mhm.
good. I'm 54. Eating these foods really gives you a lovely glow, doesn't it? And I mean, my hormones now are off the scale fabulous. Whereas, before I had completely lost interest. My libido had gone out of the window. Don't know where it went. But so let's introduce everybody to you, James, and tell us a little bit about how did you get where you're at to be known as the carnivorist?
Oh my goodness, what a journey, Emma. So first of all, thank you for having me on this show today. I really appreciate, you taking the time out to interview me. My mission right now, Emma, so you are aware, is to let folks know my story, and hopefully someone that hears, and your listeners will hear later on, that it was through podcasts like Timeless Cookery that allowed me to figure out what was going wrong with my health and heal. And it was such an integral part of my journey. So I committed, once I healed, to get out there, share my story, and to help others that may be struggling. It's so important. And you mentioned Low Ox Grandma, and God bless her. She is an absolute gem. Folks, if you haven't gone back and listened to Emma's interview on Timeless Cookery with Low Ox Grandma, please do it now. It was just an incredible interview. And I also interviewed her recently, and she really gets out there and lets everybody know it in her own personal way. No nonsense approach, which is great. Just to give, okay, so let's give a background on me. I was born and raised in the beautiful island of Bermuda, which is where I'm coming to you from today. It's a wonderful place to live. I went to school here for my first part of my education, then ended up going to Canada for my university degree in education, simply because there's no post-secondary education here, and it was cheaper for me because my father's Canadian, so I got the discount of being a Canadian citizen as well. Um, During that time when I was in university, I ended up meeting a young lady at the time who was a vegetarian. And we ended up, as one does, you're in the same household living together. I started to experiment with the vegetarian diet. Now, Emma, I'm going back into the early 90s. So for her as a young lady, it was quite commendable because there wasn't a lot of stuff out there on the vegetarian diet. And, I started to watch her and notice her eating more plants, getting away from the big bad red meat, which was vilified in the 90s, wasn't it? With the dietary guidelines from the US and saturated fats being vilified. So I followed suit. It was just an easy thing to do. And in the beginning, noticed some benefits. I had always been a sort of overweight, chunky kid, and I lost some weight, which felt good. I was getting more into exercise. Came back to the island and continued on. I was actually literally vegetarian slash pescatarian for decades. And the reason I say pescatarian is because being from Bermuda, having all that access to the lovely fish, I included that in. And hindsight being 2020,
Thankfully,
yes,
thankfully, because otherwise, what you'd probably be in a much worse state.
this is it, Emma. And I look back now after having told this story a couple of times. I shudder to think what would have been my state of health, because your listeners will hear shortly that it got very bad and scary for me if I hadn't had the fish in my early stages,
My
just
God.
as a source of omega-3s and fats and animal protein. So anyway, long story short, continued on. That young lady eventually, we didn't marry, but she ended up going off and she became a veterinarian. So it still shows you her love for animals. God bless her. I think she's still vegetarian to this point. I'm not sure. I met my wife, and she noticed I was vegetarian, and she started looking more into, as she is very knowledgeable and inquisitive, the vegan diet at the time. Now I'm going back to 2014 and 15 here as we've jumped forward. So you can picture it. I've been vegetarian, pescatarian. We've just got married. And, we sort of fell victim to a lot of the propaganda that was out there on the vegan diet. Think of things like Game Changers, Cowspiracy, Forks Over Knives, those type of
There
movies.
was a lot of money spent on that propaganda.
There
Yeah.
sure was. Well, you look at James Cameron and the financial backing he alone has, and
That
we
was
looked
the
now.
director of Avatar, wasn't it?
You got it. You got it. And he was the financial backer for Game Changers and director, I believe. And it was all in an effort to sell his pea protein, vegan pea protein. And I think him and his wife are vegans, if I'm not mistaken. So
Well, good luck to them.
this is it. This is it. And so we definitely thought we were doing the right thing by making the switch to being full vegan, both of us. Now, you have to understand, my wife she's originally Venezuelan, moved to the United States, and she had grown up as a meat eater. So for her to look at this and say, okay, I think we're making a good change for ourselves, for the planet, our health, animals' sake. It was a big decision, and we both went into it. My wife went so far into it that she got certified fully as a plant-based vegan chef from the Matthew Kenny Culinary Institute. Still has that designation. So when folks approach me later on, as we'll talk about, as I transition back, thankfully, to eating more carnivore and animal based, you must not have been doing the vegan diet correctly. I can unequivocally tell them we were, because we were eating whole foods, plant based, all fresh produce, organic. And I even supplemented with the various things, things like B12, which we know are deficient in the diet. So yeah, I'll pause for a second there in case you have any questions, but that's where I got to. So if you look around 2014, 15, I started this vegan diet, eliminated a lot of the processed foods, and began to feel better. Let me just state that.
Isn't that interesting, though? That a lot of people say that when I went vegan, I felt great for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sort of slowly goes downhill. I think it's like fasting, isn't it? Veganism.
It
Uh,
is. And inherently, Emma, I think what happens is because you get into the whole, it's a mindset, and you start following and eliminating a lot of the processed foods as well. So a lot of those refined processed foods. So when you're thinking you're doing this for health reasons specifically, you delve deeper into what's more harmful for your health, and inherently you go further into the whole foods, plant-based. At least that's what I find and have found with a lot of vegans now. Yeah. So I did
yeah.
feel better for the first couple of years. Mine lasted for about a year and a half. I felt
Okay.
really good.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And that is
Yeah.
wonderful. But
Yeah.
I've met and worked with a lot of vegans, and specifically I've worked with vegan mamas who've been attempting to procreate as a vegan and have children and then bring up baby vegan. And it's just been disastrous. And their little baby teeth have all gone black, not
Mm.
all, but some of them have gone black, and the mamas are like, heck, what am I doing wrong? I thought it was all, and then I've had to sort of help them deprogram their mother's mind about kindness to animals and, whatnot, to help them understand that we are all a part of the cycle of life, that you are actually worm food and the bacteria are going to eat you up when you die. You just as much as, and it's just natural that things are living and dying, living, dying, living and dying all the time. On a micro scale, it's happening in nanoseconds. On a bigger scale, we live for 70 years. Doesn't make any difference. It's all part of the cycle of life. And we are here as sensual beings to honor the cycle of life, and animals are a part of the wonderful kind of, it's designed that way, that animals, they're like, they are eating the grass and the bushes. It's like they're lawnmowers and hedge clippers that actually recycle, and then they poop. And so it's the holy cow with the holy, the holy cow eats the holy grass, does the holy poop for the holy microorganisms. It's all part of the beautiful cycle of life, which you are a part of. And so I had to deprogram them and say, listen, we love the chicken. One vegan lady eventually bought a chicken, stuck it in the pot to give her babies with blackened teeth the chicken stock, and they'd all sit around the pot, hold hands, and sing a little song of gratitude to the chicken before they ate it. That's the kind of wonderful attitude we want. They changed their whole thinking, got into the fact that yes, they need animal products, and they honored the animals by incorporating them into the cycle of life. Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You hit the nail on the head, Emma. And we'll get into, as we move along in my journey, as to how now I wish I could go back then and shake my younger self a few years back. But, we learn from these things, don't we? This was all an experience. And I will tell you that having gone from vegan, then adding the animal foods back in, it's made me appreciate even more the cycle of life. And you would think it would be the opposite, going vegan and appreciating that you're quote unquote saving the animals. And you just hit the nail on the head, that you have to appreciate the cycle of life, the regenerative nature of agriculture, how that even the vegans don't realize when we're, tilling all these crops, we're killing all the small animals through the combines, harvesters, and everything of this nature. And it's just made me appreciate. And now when we eat the animals, we always say thank you for their sacrifice to nourish our bodies. It's just the cycle of life. You hit the nail on the head. But yeah, so the first couple of years I felt really good. And having looked back on it now, I should have started to notice some of the symptoms creeping in. Things like brain fog, as you mentioned, your libido starting to wane, and mine eventually went completely off the cliff. My testosterone was in the toilet because I was not eating any animal-based protein. And my digestion started to get worse. And by the 5th year, things got really bad, to the point where I continually was at my GP thinking that I had autoimmune issues because my memory was getting worse and worse. The brain fog, I couldn't think clearly. I was unable to be at work. I was put on disability. I started having bleeding out of my bowels. My GP thought I had colitis, which more than likely it was at the time. This was just before COVID hit. So living in Bermuda, I wasn't able, once COVID hit, to get to have the colonoscopy done because our little tiny hospital shut down because of the COVID. So it was
You don't
incumbent
want a
on me.
colonoscopy anyway, frankly. I mean,
No,
you don't really want one anyway, so don't
it's not
worry
something you want,
about
but
it.
yeah,
We
it's
don't need to. We don't need them to stick a camera up to have a look and see what's going on. We kind of know what's going on, don't we?
we
Frankly.
do. But it was incumbent on me then to try and figure out a way, because no matter how much I was shoveling in my face, and again, here's where the dogmatic approach failed me. I just kept hammering away at this vegan diet, thinking there's can't be possibly the diet, because this is the best diet in the world, isn't it? This is everything when you type in Google that you're going to find out there that says you're going to have A1 health. This is the best thing for you and the planet. So I eventually landed on this lady who prescribed having kale and spinach smoothies with chia seeds and kiwi fruit 3 times a day. Yeah,
How
blended up.
cute.
And she was a physician. She's still out there, physician, and prescribing this on her YouTube channels and whatnot. But it literally nearly killed me. My bowels got worse. I ended up at 127, pounds, emaciated at 6'2". I looked like a skeleton walking. I barely had any energy. I could hardly communicate. I was laid up in bed most of the time and lost my job. No insurance, and was really, really scared for my life and for just everything. And I didn't know how to find a way out. And
But
so
you
what
did.
I
You
did,
did find a
and
way out. Thank
I
God.
did.
Thank God. Well done.
And this will make you smile. What happened was I started to Google. I thought to myself, okay, right, this is it. This is crazy. I've got to start Googling symptoms associated with eating all these plants on Dr. Google. And the good Lord intervened and sent down an angel by the name of Sally Norton. And I found her presentation, Lost Seasonality in the Overconsumption of Plants, on YouTube. And I must have watched it, Emma, about 5 times, because my brain fog mind was not comprehending that this could be the case. I mean, so what she's saying is that we've been eating all these plants, over consuming them out of season because they're in the grocery stores now, ubiquitous of health, whereas in our ancestral past, we should have been eating them sparingly, using them medicinally rather than just blending them up in smoothies and bombarding our stuff with all these plant toxins that are inherently in them, aren't they? Because plants defend themselves in that way. All right.
Yeah.
And once I found her presentation, it opened up a world of possibilities for me. I have been doing all this wrong for these years?
And did I do it to myself because I
And
believed? And then you have this massive like, oh my God, I did it to myself. It's
this is it.
awful. And then your eyes are open and you're like, whoa, they're telling us so many lies. And then it opens up a whole other can of worms about a whole other lot of stuff. I mean, you've got to laugh about it, because if you don't laugh, you cry.
Well,
Frankly.
at this point, normally I'm in tears now because I've told the story a few times, and there's still a couple coming here. I can feel it, because your listeners should know that I was in a very dark place. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was scared. And for me, I didn't know that there was a way out. And good fortune and the good Lord found that presentation. And as you correctly said, Emma, allowed me to go down all these rabbit holes afterwards because I couldn't do much else. And you should be aware that because I was laid up most of the time, it was my wife who suggested that I started looking for things like podcasts and YouTube presentations. And that's how I came across it. And then I found Dr. Baker on YouTube with Joe Rogan. And then I found more on carnivore. I listened to every presentation Sally had ever done and really started to wrap my head around, as you correctly said, I had been hammering this nail into myself for so long, and it was time I got up off that nail instead of, taking an aspirin for the pain, as I like to say.
Wow, well done, darling heart. Gosh, James, what a story. And you do reach a point where you're like, is this my life? Is this it? It's
That's
over, basically. My life's over. You
that's
can't.
it.
Yeah. So that was me about 15 years ago with gaps and finding Dr. Natasha
Yes.
online and reading Dr. Natasha's book and literally crying as I'm reading it, going, this explains my daughter's night terrors. Because I was working with myself and my two kids. My two kids' symptoms were what was troubling me. They had tics, Tourette's, um, endless ear infections, bedwetting, skin rashes. I mean, you name it, they had it. They were miserable, whining children, and I was an exhausted, bad-tempered mother who didn't really understand what was going on, and particularly I didn't even like my daughter very much at that point. And then I had a paradigm shift and realized it was her gut bugs that I didn't like. It wasn't her, it was her gut bugs, and that there was nothing wrong with me as a mother. I was trying to do my best, but actually I'd been misinformed, and now I had the truth. When I read that book, I was just in floods. I was like, this is it. This is it. Come on, the whole world needs to know about this. And then it just
This
gives
is
you this
it.
massive incentive to tell the world. Anybody thinking about bearing children, anybody even thinking about having a child needs to get on this. Not food as medicine and proper nutrition, now. Now, the time is now. Wow. So when was that you made the discovery that you'd done it to yourself? When was
Yeah.
that?
So that was probably towards the end of 2020, in that first year
Crikey.
of the
That's
pandemic.
quite
Yeah.
recent then, eh?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I made the commitment to myself that you have to do something, because you are literally faced with the prospect of not being around for much longer, scared out of your mind, continuing to lose weight. I mean, my family was worried. I was worried for myself. And I said, okay, this is it. It's clear to me that I need to add some animal-based nutrition back in my diet, which is exactly what I set out to do. Now, your
Do or
listeners should,
die.
that's it. You said it. That is nail on the head, Emma. And your listeners should be aware that it wasn't an easy process. And please be aware, folks, that as I go through this timeline, we're condensing it here in terms of the presentation today. But, as you can clearly hear, I was vegetarian, pescatarian for decades, then vegan for 5+ years. So I had been doing a lot of damage to my body. I had been ingesting a whole ton of plants, very little animal-based nutrition. My hormones were in the toilet. My thyroid was out of whack. My liver wasn't working properly. My gallbladder, they found cysts in there. I was not able to digest. I was severely constipated, only using the bathroom maybe once every 4 or 5 days, if that.
Wow.
And it took a lot along the journey to get back on track. I was having severe histamine issues. My skin was cracking. My hair was falling out all over my body. These are the things that I was faced with because I chose that way of eating. And I cannot stress enough, folks who say that this vegan diet has been working for them long term, it's been wonderful for them. I say to them, okay, I'm very happy for you that it has thus far, but please be aware. I don't wish anything bad on anyone ever, but please be aware at some point in the future, whether it's now or when you're 85 or whatever, chickens will come home to roost. They always do. The body is going to put up a fight eventually because it needs these types of animal foods and nutrition, doesn't it, Emma, as a GAPS? And you should be aware as well. I went down the GAPS, and thank you to Dr. McBride, because I realized how, and intuitively as a GAPS coach, you would know that the gut was connected to my brain, and my gut was so damaged that I was depressed and anxious all the time. I was literally sleeping maybe 2 hours a night for a couple of years. It was terrible. I was so anxious I couldn't sleep. Yeah.
Wow. What a state to be in. But you say you only really twigged and clicked at the end of 2020. And so that's only nearly 2 years
Yes.
that you've effected a miraculous recovery from being on death's doorstep. That's not bad. I mean, I know it's a journey, but so how long do you think it took you to sort of like get back on your feet?
So I will tell your listeners this. My first thing that I added back in when people always often ask me, was there a lot of cognitive dissonance as being a vegan when you added that first? What was it like taking that first bite of animal food? So I chose the lesser of all the evils and went back to adding fish in, because I knew from my prior pescatarian time, and my first foray back into the animal-based world was salmon. And taking that first bite again was an unbelievable experience. It was hard at first, but once I did, I kid you not, maybe an hour or two later, I could almost feel like a light switch was coming back on. I said to my wife, I said, I'm thinking a little bit more clearly. I said, no, maybe this is placebo, but let me just try. Now, your listeners should also be aware that my digestion
I've got real big goosebumps from that one. I've got real big goosebumps now.
Yeah, it was like almost like a light switch being turned up, the dimmer switch coming back on. And I thought, this is incredible. But I still had the issues to get through with my digestion. It was rough on my digestion because, as you and I know, Emma, as we get older, we produce less stomach acid, don't we, as we get older? And when we have a compromised digestion, the enzymes that we produce to break down things like meat, and especially being a vegan, are stopped being produced by a liver that is either fatty or is struggling to keep up with the diet that you've bombarded with all over your growing up years. So I had to supplement a little bit to help me and help fix my gut. So I employed things like bone broths to help me along my way. At first, it was a challenge because, as I mentioned, I was suffering from the histamine. But
do you know there's a big difference, though, James, between bone broth and meat stock?
You got it. That's what I learned.
Okay, great. That's good. Everybody needs to know that, because everyone's like, yeah, bone broth, bone broth. But we don't want bone broth. If we want gut healing, we don't want bone broth. We want meat stock, which is just cooked for a lot less time, basically. It's the meat and the skin and the bones, not just the bones. Anyway.
Thank you for mentioning that, Emma, because it was a presentation with Dr. Natasha that made me realize that. I remember her clearly talking about her journey with her daughter, I believe it was, right?
Her son was vaccine down. Well, her
son that she got onto or became a GAPS practitioner because of that. Was it her daughter or her son? I can't recall. Her son.
Yeah.
And she was saying that, those that have histamine intolerances need to go to the stock, as you correctly said. So I realized that and made that adaptation, excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were talking about enzymes, our enzyme production goes right down because all the epithelial cells are dead on our gut lining, and we can't, not producing our pancreatic enzymes properly. But this is why on GAPS, we eat a lot of fermented foods, which is then people were like, but I'm histamine, I can't do the histamine thing because I can't eat the food. And so it's like, how do you do it? But you just do it super slowly. You just introduce literally one drop at a time, literally one drop of kefir with that meal, another drop of kefir, and then, a little drop of sauerkraut juice. You just do it like homeopathic dosing, and then slowly, you're going to get there. People just go in too hard and fast with like a cup of kefir or whatever, and it just knocks their socks off, and they're like, I can't eat that. It makes me feel terrible. You just went in too hard and fast, babe.
But, that's it. And I love talking to you, Emma, because you hit on so many points that remind me of what happened on my journey now that I haven't shared before. And this is exactly what I did. I remember again from Dr. Natasha's presentation, going very slow. And I remember I had a little shot glass every morning with the kefir, and I would just take a little sip of kefir because dairy was giving me a lot of trouble. But I knew that inherently that kefir would help my gut if I just took it slowly. And this is the type of things that I did. And it segues nicely into, as I went along, I sort of became keto. I removed, as per Sally's recommendation, a lot of the high oxalate vegetables from my diet, and high oxalate fruits as well. However, I still had a few plants and fruits in my diet in that first year because I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go lower. Then, of course, as you correctly mentioned, we tend to go full throttle into things, don't we? I said to myself, well, carnivore's got to be the way for me. I'm going to just full bore as a man. I'm going, rev it up and let's hit it. And so in sort of late 2021, I decided to go fully carnivore. And for the first couple of months, getting fat adapted was a bit of a challenge. But once I did, I felt great for about a month or two. And then the oxalate dumping started.
Yeah, I
And you
know.
can imagine from my background how that felt.
Ooh.
It really hit me like a severe wave. So I thought, oh God, this is happening again. I've done something completely wrong. Went back to dear Sally. She told me, you had better add some oxalate foods
Back
back
in.
in your,
Have some
yeah,
chocolate.
something quickly, or you're going to be in a world of hurt. And that's what was happening to me. The leg aches, the muscle cramps, the fibromyalgia had come back with a vengeance. And I'm thinking, no, 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 there's no plants or fruits or anything in my diet. What is going on? And my body finally went, thank you, the bombing stopped, we're about to release all of this to get it
Yeah.
out. And
Yeah.
I remember Sally sent me a message on Instagram and said, do yourself a favor, get a cup of black tea, steep it forever, and put another bag in there, because black tea, for your listeners should know, is very high oxalate. And that'll at least abate the symptoms, because for your listeners, what happens is your body sequesters all these plant toxins in various spots, specifically injury spots over the years. And then once you lower or slow down on the ingestion of these foods, it starts to release them. And what you want to do, like titrating down, is make sure that you go slowly. Don't do like this bozo here did and go full bore, because it can be just as dangerous, can it, Emma?
Man, so did you sip the black tea, just have a few sips until you felt better, or did you just neck the lot? What did you do?
I actually necked the first cup and then had a second one. And Sally will tell you, it's usually within the hour. And that's what happened. Usually within the hour, you start to feel some relief. And I did. And I noticed it right away, that body pain and that joint pain that was really troubling me, literally to the point I felt like I couldn't stand. It was so painful. It helped. And then I made a commitment after that. I didn't go back to the vegetables, because I'm doing my best to never go back to any vegetables, Emma, but that's just me because of my digestion. But I added in some fruits, and I continue to eat those with my diet now daily. And it's,
So
yeah.
you're the carnivorist, and I've been doing a kind of carnivore-ish thing,
Yes.
So are you pure? Tell us now what you eat then, vaguely. I'm interested to know, because it's not just meat, is it?
Well, oh yeah, it's not just meat. I include dairy now, thank God, and I can drink as much kefir and cheese, raw cheese, as I love. I'm a
Oh,
sucker for cheese.
baby, me too. I love
So
it. Butter.
for folks that end up following me on Instagram, and I'll give you the handle at the end of our presentation, I usually post what I eat every day up in my story. So I usually start with some ground beef patties, turkey bacon every morning. And I get a lot of questions about the turkey bacon. I just like the turkey bacon. I like the taste. It's another way for me to incorporate another animal in my diet rather than having pork all the time. Um, and then in the mornings, I have raw cheese and kefir, and organic kefir, which I absolutely love. I'm eating 3 meals a day now. Your listeners should be aware, simply because I'm looking to put weight back on. I went, as you heard earlier, down to 127 pounds. By rights, at 6'2", I should be up near 180 at some weight like that. So I'm in the enviable position of trying to eat as much as I can and get that weight back on, which thankfully I'm at 170 now. I feel fantastic. So I do eat a small lunch, again, of some either patties or things like that with some butter on top, or ghee, usually ghee. And in the evenings is where I really love to experiment. I'll use the pressure cooker or barbecue or air fryer and have some chicken or brisket and steaks. I eat a lot of red meat these days. I really enjoy it, especially fattier cuts of red meat. And your listeners should be aware, I feel unbelievable.
You look great.
I look great. I feel great. I am just turned 50 this year, as I mentioned. I feel, at least in my head, like I'm in my 20s again. Physically, I'm doing stuff that I hadn't done in decades, going, exercising, lifting weights. And as you say, Emma, an unbelievable turnaround comparatively to where I was a
In
couple
only
of
a
short years
year.
ago.
Exactly. And people spend years struggling and suffering. And it's like, just get a low ox aware and, get those toxins out and see what you can do. You didn't mention eggs in your.
Yes. Oh, excuse
Oh,
me.
yeah.
Yes.
Great.
I do incorporate eggs, and eggs were a big key for me. If folks have listened to my past presentations, as I transitioned over, because I found that I could tolerate eggs even more than dairy at the beginning, which was lucky for me. So I included at least probably half a dozen eggs during each day. Now I don't eat as much. I'll use them every couple of days as opposed to every day, but they're definitely there. Things like, for the choline in the eggs and
Yeah.
the egg yolks, and for the fats and protein. It's just an
Those
unbelievable
raw
precious food.
egg yolks are just so beautifully easily assimilable, aren't they? Even to a very broken digestive system, they as long as they're tolerated, but mostly they're just sucked in straight away. Don't need any digestion. That means you don't have to spend any energy. Just give
Yeah.
you all the good stuff straight away.
That's
And
it. Sorry to interrupt you, Emma.
yeah, go on.
I wanted to say one thing to your listeners, and I posted about this the other day. And again, I'll just touch back on how important it is for folks to be their own N of one. Make sure you experiment. Don't be afraid to try things as in your journey of healing.
What
Your
did you
body
say?
will
To be their own end of.
N of one, which in experiments in scientific realms, when you have an N of one, it means you're experimenting with just one person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So be your own N of one, be your own self-experiment. And sorry, I said one person, one variable, I should say, and that variable is yourself. And it's so important. I tried so many things along my way, which allow me to realize my body would tell me very quickly what worked and what didn't, doesn't it? I mean, they're incredible things, our bodies.
Mm.
And just be aware that there are going to be ups and downs. This is not a linear process. We didn't get sick in a day. We're not going to heal in a day. I'm very lucky that it took me this year and a half to come where I am, but I still have bad dumping days. I had a bad week last week where I was in quite a bit of pain, but I knew what I needed to do thanks to folks like yourself, Sally, sharing all this information. So many people get stuck in the rut that they're going to feel this way for the rest of their lives, but it doesn't have to be. Loak's grandma was here. She would say the same thing. This doesn't have to be your lot in life. You can get better. You will get better. Have faith. It will happen.
I always say we are remarkable beings with unbelievable, almost unbelievable powers of regeneration. We
Yes.
can just give our bodies, well, number one, stop poisoning yourself. And then
Yes.
number two, nourish yourself properly. Like, don't believe what the mainstream tell you is good nutrition, basically. Go and find people who you like the look of and use your intuition. Let your gut tell you. They look, you like, I like the look of them. They look like they're talking sense and they're being real. They've got nothing to prove. They've got a wonderful story of this was me then. I was on death's doorstep, and now this is me now. Those are exactly the people you want to work with. I get a bit twitchy about the FODMAP diet because
Yes.
FODMAP was developed by MIT scientists in a lab, and it's like, well, what do you know? I really honestly say that to myself. I was like, what do you know? Compared to Dr. Natasha, who's a mother who's trying to keep her son alive.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also a neurological surgeon and a gastroenterological specialist. You know, she's got 2 medical degrees, Dr. Natasha, so she's very well educated. But basically, she's a mother trying to keep her son alive. That's good. I'll go for that one anytime. Forget the scientist. I'm not interested. You know what I mean?
This is you're absolutely right. And another thing that I come across quite recently as I share my journey, Emma, is folks get so caught up in doing everything perfectly, don't they? They see these folks on Instagram and Facebook, and they feel that this has to be the way. This is so dogmatic, the approach, that if I fall off, or if I have one day where, if God forbid, that I fall back and eat some high oxalate foods, that I'm doomed and I'm excommunicated from the carnivore or GAPS community. They're going to bar me. And I just want to tell them, don't, as I said in my post, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. You're going to have days like this, and no one's going to excommunicate you. And we're all human. To err is human. And you just get back up on there. You can do it. And as
Get back
long as
on
you,
the horse and
yeah,
ride. Right. Yeah. I
stay
mean,
disciplined, right?
that's a beautiful thing to say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, be disciplined to a point, but then when you do fall off the horse, just get straight
Yes.
back on it, and instant forgiveness. That's another thing. Instant
Yes.
forgiveness for any perceived misdemeanors, and also instant forgiveness for perceived wrongs, as in you think, oh my God, I really messed up. I did that so wrong for so long. For all those years, I was doing it so wrong. And we can beat ourselves up. But once you've had the realization, you know the road, it's like, well, forget the past. The past is like, what was the point? Forget it.
You again are so astute, Emma, because when I had that realization that I had been doing it to myself, I got very angry with myself.
Yeah.
I did for a little while. I was like, you fool, what have you done? And I realized, as the brain fog started to lift and as my depression and anxiety started to go away, folks should be aware that the anxiety left within about 3 or 4 months, which was unbelievable.
That's great.
The sort of depression because of what I'm talking about now was a little longer, maybe 6 months or so, but completely gone. I was beating myself up so much internally, like I've just wasted all those years. But no, you can't do that. You have to look forward, and you have to be thankful for what you have now and the lessons that are learned, right? And I'm just so thankful, which is why I'm so thankful again for you today for being able to share this, because I just, like you said, I want to get it out there.
Yeah, man, I'm loving your enthusiasm. It's wonderful. You're going to be a fantastic coach, and I'm just loving your enthusiasm. It's such a visceral, real experience because it's relatively recent for you.
Yes.
Mine happened about 15 years ago, and I've been sort of trying to bring the message home about the food as the medicine ever since. And I'm still hugely enthusiastic, but I'm a bit more, I don't know. I love your visceral enthusiasm for it. It's wonderful. It's a great energy. I'm a
Thank
bit
you.
more kind of like giggly about it now. It's like, we really messed up. Oh, well, study it. Never mind. And most of the people who come on my program, they mostly say, Emma, you took being perfect out of the equation. Nobody needs to be perfect. And the other thing that you did was make me feel relaxed. And the other thing
Yes.
you did was make me feel creative in the kitchen. Come to your senses. People come to their senses. And just start to enjoy the process, because it is a challenge when you change the way you eat, isn't it? It's a challenge when you change the way you eat.
It certainly is, Emma. And again, this is your channel, but I would say, because I plan on sharing this on my own channels for my own followers as well, please go follow Emma on Instagram, because the joy of my day are seeing your reels, Emma, where you're either singing or I really love those, and they're inspirational and they're fun. And I think this space needs some more fun. We have so many serious-minded folks out there, which is great. We need both, but we need some levity as well. People that are sick need levity.
Yes,
And
because
you bring it
laughter
to the
is the
space.
best medicine. Laughter is the best medicine. Absolutely, 100%. And I was an actress in another life. I mean, I was an actress for 10 years. I played a doctor on a medical drama in the UK. Yeah, called Medics. And I was clip clopping in my white coat with my stethoscope around my neck, spouting really terrible lines.
I'm
Like,
writing this down, Emma.
oh my God.
I'm gonna go look
I
it
mean,
up.
it was in the 90s. I don't even know if you'll find anything online about it, but you might do. But I used to spout lines like, I've said this a lot on my channel before, but I'll tell you, the drug regime is crucial, as is getting to outpatient sessions. So I'll see you next week. That was one of my lines, like drug pushing for the pharmaceutical industry. I was so miserable in that work.
Can you imagine? Look at where
Yeah.
you are now, because that's just incredible,
Well,
really,
I'm
isn't it?
using my 3 years at LAMDA, darling, London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, to muck about on Instagram just to catch people's attention. And as you say, for a bit of levity, because we're all human and we all mess up, and I don't mind making a bit of a fool of myself, singing, dancing, and mucking about, if it's going to bring the message home that the food is the medicine, and we can all take full responsibility for our health if
Yes.
we so choose. It's up
And
to you.
And I would implore, Emma, if there's any other, we need more men in this space to speak about the unmentionables. As Loak's grandma eloquently puts it, her stuff is out there. She talks about all her digestive issues. Same with me. I mean, I was severely constipated. Men don't like to talk about this. I had to use things like enemas and other laxatives to help me along my way, because as we know, if you don't use the bathroom, the toxins recirculate, all your hormones recirculate. It is just not good. We need to move our bowels on a daily basis if we can. And we just need more men in this space to just be open and honest. And there's a lot out there, and I'm not taking that away, but I've just noticed through my own journey that especially on the oxalate side, there's very few men out there talking about the oxalate toxicity, isn't there?
You're going to fly, when you're going to become a coach. I hear you were just telling me.
That's correct. By the
Yeah.
end of this year.
Great. You're going to fly. You're going to help so many people, and your work's really, really needed. So yeah, I mean, I've found in my 50 years of experience of being on Earth, that generally speaking, I'm talking about things 10 years before they hit the mainstream. That's been my experience with the regenerative agricultural projects I've been working on, and other stuff I've done. And so it's going to be 10 years before they really start talking about oxalates in the mainstream. So many people are going to suffer unless we get the message out there now.
Yep. And that's
So
a good moment for me to plug our dear friend Sally's book coming out, isn't it? Toxic Superfoods.
yeah.
I mean, folks, it is available for pre-order anywhere books are sold now. Make sure you go out and pre-order it. It comes out on the 27th of December.
Cool. So that'll be a happy new year present for everybody. Nice. Yeah,
Yes,
I have got another interview with Sally actually in a couple of weeks' time. I've managed to
awesome.
squeeze one in before Christmas. I'm really excited about that.
That's
What an
amazing.
amazing story, James. Thank you so much for sharing with everyone. It's fascinating, it's uplifting, it's entertaining to a degree. Even, it's very kind of you to, open up like that. And it's scary when you're like, I'm gonna die. I feel like I'm dying. It's really do or die. It really is. And I know I sort of make light of things, but seriously, it's like you're dead unless you pay attention, people. What kind of life do you want to live?
Mm-hmm.
Want to live a real, like, grounded, sexy, enjoyable life, where you feel good and you've got good energy and you've got to think straight and you've got to come up with ideas and be creative and like do it. Or do you want to like quietly be sitting in a corner going, I'm a bit achy and I can't think straight and I don't want to go? The choice is yours,
Yes. And
and
then
you
to
got.
quote my favorite movie, Emma, The Shawshank Redemption, get busy living or get busy dying. It's as simple as that. And I want to thank you again, Emma, for having me on. And thank you to your listeners for taking the time out to listen to my story today. Please just remember, you do and can have the ability to heal. Just use the resources like Timeless Cookery. And God bless you, Emma, for all that you do. Thank you.
And where can they find you? Where will people find you?
Right now, I have a YouTube channel, the_Carnivorist, and then the same thing for my Instagram handle, the_Carnivorist. You can find me there, and yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, James. Lots and lots of love to you.
Thank you. Same, Emma. Bye now.
Okay.